In the fall of 2023, a young girl visited a park with her parents and went for a bike ride. However, she never returned, prompting her parents to contact the police. The ensuing search operation quickly took a dramatic turn when investigators discovered a chilling clue that altered the course of the investigation. Ultimately, the detectives uncovered the truth, leading to a surprising conclusion. Charlotte Sena was born on September 4th, 2014, in the small American town of Greenfields, New York. She grew up in a large, loving family with her parents and two sisters, one older and one younger. Charlotte was an active and cheerful child. She loved spending time with her friends, hanging out with her sisters, and going on nature trips with her parents. Greenfields, with a population of just over 5,000, was surrounded by forests, lakes, and picturesque parks, making it an ideal place for family outings. On September 30th, 2023, when Charlotte was 9, her parents and some friends decided to visit a national park about 18 kilometers from their home. Charlotte eagerly anticipated the trip. Her friends were coming along, and they planned to bring their bikes to ride around the park. Upon arrival, the parents set up a makeshift camp while the children prepared for a bike ride. The park featured specially designed circular trails, one of which was near their camp. Charlotte and her friends chose this trail. The girls set off around 6:15 p.m. with instructions to return before dark. They completed several laps before Charlotte's friends decided to head back. However, Charlotte, not yet satisfied, wanted to do one more lap. While her friends returned to camp, Charlotte rode off alone. When Charlotte didn't return as expected, her parents grew worried. A lap on that trail took no more than 10 minutes, even at a slow pace. Concerned, the adults began searching for her. Around 6:45 p.m., they made a disturbing discovery. Charlotte's bike was abandoned beside the trail, but she was nowhere to be found. Her parents immediately feared the worst, that someone had kidnapped their daughter. There was no logical reason for Charlotte to leave her bike and walk away. Initially, they considered the possibility of a mechanical issue with the bike. However, the tires were intact and the chain was in perfect condition. Without wasting any time, they called the police. Officers arrived within 15 minutes and began their search. The abandoned bike led them to conclude that Charlotte had likely been abducted. However, they didn't rule out the possibility that she had gotten lost in the woods, so they continued their search. The police cordoned off the park, closed it to visitors, and asked everyone to leave after checking their IDs and recording their information. Some people wanted to stay and help, but without proper organization, this would only complicate things. The officers began combing every inch of the forest. Initially, they focused on the area around the circular trail but found no clues. They then expanded their search to cover the entire park, which spanned about 25 square kilometers. To aid in the search, they requested assistance from park rangers, the fire department, and state police. Later, the FBI joined the investigation, focusing on identifying a possible kidnapper. They looked for surveillance cameras near the park and along adjacent roads. If Charlotte had been kidnapped, the perpetrator likely used a vehicle to transport her. The FBI also requested information about all park visitors. Every person had to register and pay a fee to enter, so their data was stored in a database. However, sifting through this information took time, as the park was quite busy that day. Additionally, they sought location data from cell phone operators for all phones in the park at the time of Charlotte's disappearance. They considered the possibility that the kidnapper had bypassed registration, so they planned to cross-reference visitor data with cell phone locations to identify suspects. However, gathering all this data took time. The information was based on cell tower triangulation, not precise GPS tracking. The search continued late into the night, but yielded no results. Early the next morning, officers resumed their efforts, joined by more searchers. In total, over 400 people were involved in the search for Charlotte. The police also appealed to the public through the media, asking for any information related to Charlotte's disappearance. The case quickly garnered widespread attention, and the state governor held a press conference at the park to support the family. That morning, the police activated the Amber Alert system to quickly inform residents about the missing child. They hadn't done so initially because they needed to confirm that Charlotte wasn't lost in the park. Now, it was almost certain she had been kidnapped, as she hadn't been found despite the extensive search. Unfortunately, the search and FBI efforts to identify the kidnapper continued to be fruitless. By evening, officers began to doubt they would find Charlotte alive. The first few hours after a child is abducted are crucial, with high chances of a safe recovery. However, after 24 hours, the likelihood of a positive outcome sharply declines. Charlotte's search had surpassed this critical period. Nevertheless, the detectives and Charlotte's parents refused to give up. Early on the third morning, they resumed their search in the park. At around 4:20 a.m., a car pulled up to Charlotte's family home, and an unknown man exited. He approached the mailbox, dropped off a letter, and quickly left. A police officer stationed at the house initially thought the man might be a family friend, leaving a note of support. Many people had been doing so over the past few days, leaving letters and food. Despite this, the officer found the man suspicious and decided to check the mailbox. Inside was a note that immediately altered the course of the investigation. It claimed to be from the kidnapper, stating that he had Charlotte and would release her in exchange for $50,000. The note was rushed to a lab for urgent analysis. Soon, experts discovered several fingerprints and ran the first one through the database. It was too smudged to yield any matches. On the second attempt, they struck gold. The print matched a 47-year-old man named Craig Nelson Ross, Jr., who had been in the New York State database since 1999 due to a DUI arrest. Ross lived just a few kilometers from Charlotte's family home, and police immediately headed there. However, they encountered an obstacle. The house had recently been foreclosed because Ross had failed to pay property taxes for several years. The police gathered information on Ross and soon learned that he had been living in a trailer on his mother's property, located 22 kilometers from Greenfields. They quickly secured a warrant and mobilized helicopters and over 30 SWAT officers to surround and raid the trailer using flashbang grenades. Ross, present inside, resisted, but was swiftly arrested. Initially, there was no sign of Charlotte, leading officers to fear she wasn't there. However, upon searching the trailer, they found a closed closet filled with rags. Moving them aside, they discovered Charlotte underneath. She was alive and immediately leapt into the arms of her rescuers. Charlotte was taken to the hospital for a checkup, where doctors confirmed she was unharmed. She was quickly discharged and taken home. Her parents, along with the hundreds involved in the search operation, were overjoyed. The family was reunited with Charlotte at the hospital, celebrating her safe return. In an extraordinary turn of events, just 10 minutes before her daughter's release, a mother shared a strange premonition with her acquaintances. At that moment, she was in the park, where active searches for her daughter were ongoing. Suddenly, she felt a strong intuition that her daughter would return home today. Miraculously, 10 minutes later, the police informed her about Charlotte's release. Meanwhile, detectives arrested Ross without bail and took him for questioning. Given the recent nature of this case, the police are withholding details about their conversation with the kidnapper. However, it appears he did not admit to his crime, meaning the case will proceed to court. Information about the suspect and his motives has surfaced. Ross's ex-girlfriend revealed to journalists that in 2017 she obtained a restraining order against him. At the time, she lived with Ross, his 12-year-old son, and 14-year-old daughter in his mother's house. One day, during an argument, Ross attacked her and attempted to strangle her, leading her to contact the police. The woman noted that Ross might have planned the girl's abduction for months. She described Ross as someone who avoided work and constantly looked for ways to live off others, primarily relying on his mother. Claiming he had a severe illness, he manipulated his mother into supporting him. Regarding Charlotte, Ross's ex-girlfriend believes he initially targeted her family for ransom. Though the girl's parents belonged to the middle class, her late grandfather was quite wealthy. In 1998, he slipped and suffered a severe injury, sued the city authorities, and received over $2 million in compensation. Even after more than 20 years, many residents of Greenfield still remember this incident. Ross's ex-girlfriend revealed that he was likely aware of a potential payout, suggesting that he aimed to profit from the kidnapping of young Charlotte. The circumstances surrounding Charlotte's abduction from a park, where she was left unattended for only a few minutes, point to Ross's involvement. His ex-girlfriend believes he had been observing the family for a considerable time, studying their routines and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Further evidence of Ross's premeditation emerged when his ex-girlfriend disclosed that Ross had covered all the windows of his trailer with tarpaulin several months before the crime, a peculiar action he had never taken before. Given that Charlotte was found in his trailer, this behavior suggests meticulous planning. Neighbors also shared unsettling observations about Ross. One woman recounted an incident where Ross tried to take her 10-year-old son somewhere, prompting her to intervene. Another neighbor mentioned that Ross's family had always been problematic, with Ross frequently begging for food since childhood. Shortly after these revelations, the police disclosed additional information about Ross's criminal history. A year before an assault on his girlfriend, Ross was arrested for stalking but received no severe punishment. Just a month before Charlotte's abduction, he was a suspect in a case involving inappropriate behavior with a minor relative. But the case was dismissed due to a lack of evidence. Reporters also spoke with his now adult son, who expressed his deep resentment toward Ross and wished his father would remain in prison, though he shared no further details. Approximately a month after Ross's arrest, the police made a somber statement. Besides the kidnapping charge, Ross faced accusations of mistreating Charlotte while she was held captive in his trailer. However, the police have yet to disclose specific details. It's known that Ross denied these charges and plans to defend himself in court. Given that Charlotte was discovered in his trailer, his chances of avoiding punishment seem slim. Investigators found fingerprints on the ransom note and circumstantial evidence linking him to the crime. Analysis of cell phone location data during the abduction revealed Ross's smartphone was present in the park. With Ross's trial set to begin in April 2024, detectives are also exploring his potential involvement in two high-profile, unsolved cases. In August 2003, an 18-year-old girl named Jennifer Hymond disappeared while selling magazines in a town called Milton. Her remains were found 6 years later near a lake, just 18 kilometers from Ross's then residence. 2 years after Jennifer's disappearance, 19-year-old Christina White vanished from a trailer park near Milton. Her remains were discovered a year later, but the case remained unsolved. At that time, Ross lived in the same trailer park. The police are now considering Ross's possible involvement in these murders, though they currently lack concrete evidence or may be withholding it for investigative purposes. Despite the overwhelming evidence of his guilt in Charlotte's case, Ross might be offered a plea bargain. If he continues to deny his guilt, Charlotte may have to testify in court, recounting her experience. To avoid such a traumatic situation for Charlotte, a plea deal might be proposed.